Though After Effects is not a full-featured video editor or nonlinear editing application like Premiere Pro, it does contain some basic features for choosing which parts of a footage item to use and for trimming layers in the timeline panel. Let's see how trimming works. Begin by double-clicking a footage item in the project panel to open it in a footage panel. Notice this is a rather long movie, about 3 minutes long, but we only want to use a piece of it. So let's go to this point here, and I'm pressing the page up and page down keys to move forward and backward one frame at a time. So page up and page down until I get to that frame that I want as my first frame. Then I'll click Set Endpoint to current time. The endpoint is the first frame of a movie that plays in a layer. Then I'll use Shift Page Down to move forward 10 frames at a time. And somewhere right about here, I'll use Page Up to go back a frame at a time. And that's the last frame that I want for this clip. So I'll click Set Out Point. There, now I have a short span of this movie between my in point and my out point that I'll use in my composition. Now, to ensure that we create a composition that matches the settings of the movie, we can drag the footage item down to the new composition icon. And note, if we drag through, we only are using the pieces between our in and out point. If you want to change the endpoint in the timeline panel, you can drag on the end of the layer bar, and it moves the endpoint. Notice, because the current time indicator is sitting before the endpoint, where there's no image data, you're just seeing the composition background. If there were other layers beneath this layer, you would see through to them. If I move the current time indicator so that it's after the endpoint, we see the image data again. You can also trim the out point by dragging it. And note, again, if I put my current time indicator past the out point, because it's past the end of the layer, you just see the composition background. If you want to change which part of the source movie plays between the in and the out point, do a slip edit. You do a slip edit by dragging this slip edit bar, which is the pale ghostly bar that shares the track with the layer. This doesn't move the in and out points, it just moves the source item behind the layer, so to speak. Another way to change the out point is to press Alt or Option on macOS and press the bracket. That will trim the out point so that it goes to the current time indicator, like so. I'll press Ctrl-Z to undo. And now if I press Alt and the left bracket, that's the square bracket, the endpoint will move to the current time indicator, like so. Ctrl-Z to undo. If I want to move the out point without trimming, but just to move the entire layer so that the out point is at the current time indicator, I can press the right square bracket. And if I want to move the endpoint so that it goes to where the current time indicator is, I press the left square bracket. In this case, it moved it so far that the out point is now off past the end of the composition. And I can just drag the layer back as well if I don't want to use such precision. Now let's do a little bit more trimming in the footage panel. If I go to the footage panel here, and I move the current time indicator to another part of the movie, say where these people are cheering, I can set a new endpoint. Then I can move a little later, set a new out point. Oops, looks like I didn't actually click for my endpoint. There. So now I have a little piece here that's just these people cheering. And I can insert this into the composition in a number of ways. I can put the current time indicator where I want it to be inserted. Let's say I want it to come right about here. If I go back to the footage panel, I can either choose to do a ripple insert edit or an overlay edit. I'll do the overlay edit first. The overlay edit does what it sounds like. It overlays the new clip on top of the other clip. So if we drag through and play the entire movie, we basically just end up seeing a cut. I'll press Ctrl-Z to undo. Now, notice what happens if I go back to the footage panel and click Ripple Insert Edit. The ripple insert edit split the existing layer into this piece here and this piece here, and put the newly inserted item in between, shifting this part to the right of the current time indicator down the timeline. So now, if we play through this, we see that the new clip was inserted in the middle of the existing clip. That's a ripple edit. I'll press Ctrl-Z to undo, so that we now just have our one layer here. A common question is, how does one apply an effect to just one part of a layer, to just one duration? Well, one way that you can do that is to split the layer. So if I go to Edit, Split Layer, now there are two pieces of the layer on either side of the current time indicator. So now I can apply an effect, such as the black and white effect, so that it only applies to one of the layers. Of course, another way of accomplishing very much the same thing would be to have not split the layer and instead use a trimmed adjustment layer to only apply the effect to a certain duration. So, as you can see, there are some basic tools in After Effects for trimming layers, and you don't necessarily need to go out to a nonlinear editor just to do very basic ripple insert and overlay edits. But you probably don't want to cut an entire feature film in After Effects.